let's say it was really important that I'm here in the root directory and I really wanted to make that high folder. How would I do it? Well, the only user that can do it is the superuser. The superuser is also the other name for the root user. So you'll hear me use those two interchangeably. So the way that I could do that is I could come in and say sudo, which is basically doing superuser do make dir high. So now, because I ran sudo, this basically, which means like temporarily for one command, switch me into superuser, do something, and then come back. So now you can see in here I have this high directory, and you can see the user that did it was, wherever that went, here, root. So just to kind of prove my point, if I say sudo, who am I, what do you think it's going to say? Root, right? Because for that one command, I'm root, but now if I run who am I again, I'm going to be Ubuntu. So that's what sudo does, is it switches you quickly into root, you do one thing, and then you're out. That's because Ubuntu has super user privileges. That means that Ubuntu can run things as root, but not everything is run as root by default, which is kind of that safeguard. When I tried that rm-rf, it wouldn't have let me do that because Ubuntu was not privileged to do it, despite the fact that Ubuntu could if I had done it as sudo. Does that make sense? Cool. So that's why you don't just always run as root. Like, don't just hang out as root. That's a terrible idea because you're going to make mistakes, and not being the root user will save you from some of those dumb mistakes that you're going to do. Because it is possible. I can say sudo switch users, and look who I am now. I am the root user now. I have all power. But that's a terrible idea. So don't hang out as the super user. So in order to do that, you can just say exit, and that will get you out of your session as the root user. I would also like to point out that sudo is a very adorable dog. That's actually Sarah Drasner's dog. I asked her if I could put a picture of sudo in here, because that dog is hilarious. And also, if you go over to her house, it's funny to hear her say sudo sit, because it's like telling, it's like super user tell the dog to sit. I don't know, it makes me laugh. And that's from, yeah, Sarah Drasner, who's another teacher on Front of Masters. She does the Vue courses, and she's really awesome. This is another one that makes me laugh. Make me a sandwich. What? Make it yourself. Sudo make me a sandwich? Okay. That's another XKCD. That's another famous one. Okay. So let's go ahead and, yeah, it's a bit like Simon Says, right? It won't do it until you tell it, Simon Says, delete the root directory, right? Let's make a new user just to show you kind of how it's done. Like, the reason why I would create a new user is, like I said, if I was going to do like some sort of like job or like a task that was going to run like every day, and that task was very scoped to like it works on this one folder and does this one thing and then it finishes, I would make a new user just for that task that could only accomplish that task and can do literally nothing else. That would be a good reason to make a new user. So Ubuntu can't make any new users, but root can, so we have to switch to root. The other thing that I was going to mention about Ubuntu is normally when you do sudo, so if I say sudo echo hi, which there's no reason to do sudo there, right? Normally it asks you to enter your password when you enter sudo. Multipass is a passwordless root user, so it actually doesn't make you do it, but normally you have to enter it. So I'll show you that here in just a second, but if that's why that feels weird, if that feels weird to you. All right, so we're going to do sudo user add Brian, or you can put whatever you want there. I'm just going to put Brian. Okay, and that created a brand new user. And I'm going to do sudo passwd, which is going to allow me to set the user for, or the password for Brian. and it's going to make me enter a new password. I'm going to put something very simple and easy to remember, ASDF, which is the only password that I ever use. And now I'm going to say switch users, which is what SU does, to Brian. And it's going to make me enter my password. And now I am Brian. Who am I? Brian. So that's about it. That all you need to do to enter it as Brian. Actually, I think I'm in a different shell right now. Oh, no, I don't know. But the reason why the prompt there and something like that is we haven't set up a bunch of stuff like the login shell and all that kind of stuff, but that's how you create a new user. And then you would go about adding like them to be in the right permissions to do all this kind of stuff. And actually, if I say sudo echo hi, if I say ASDF, it's going to say Brian is not authorized to do sudo. This incident will be reported. That's the line that always made me laugh. And I actually found an XKCD about it. And it says right there, Rob is not in the sudoers file. This incident will be reported. Hey, who does the sudo report incidents to? It's like, I never looked. And it's reporting it to Santa Claus. I don't know, it made me laugh. So I actually looked it up where it goes. There's actually like a mailbox, because there's like a internal mail system on Linux, and it gets reported to like an admin in their mailbox that someone tried to do a sudo that they couldn't do. I've literally, in the history of like all of my schooling and all of my learning to code and all of my production work at companies, no one has ever mentioned this file at all, so don't worry if it says that this incident will be reported. That was very intimidating the first time I saw it in the computer lab, though. Okay. So Brian can't sudo, but what if we want to make it so Brian could sudo? Well, that can be done. So I'm going to exit out of this session with Brian. So I'm going to go back to Ubuntu, because Ubuntu does have sudo privileges. It's just that Brian doesn't. So we have to use groups. So groups are another construct within Linux that allow you to add privileges to entire groups of users. This is useful because, like, imagine you run a server, and that server has 100 users on it, and you have 50 admins and 50 non-admins. And let's say you wanted to add a new privilege to the admins that they are now able to read to this one directory. You would either have to go and add that privilege individually 50 times to each user, or if you use groups, you could just add it once to one set of group, or one group, and then everyone inside of that group would get all the privileges. So it just makes it easier to add and manage all those people. So there's a bunch of reasons. So, like, you could create like a readers group, and the readers group has access to read all the files, but can't write to it. And then you could have another writers group, and they can write to it, and then maybe not read from it. I don't know, but you can kind of manage all the privileges individually that way. So if we want to add Brian to that group, what we can do is we can run this command right here, usermod. And let's actually just put it in right here. And so you do sudo usermod. And you could do --append --groups, or you can just do -A G for the shorthand, sudo Brian. So what this is going to do is it's going to add a new group to Brian, and he's going to be added to the sudo group, and the sudo group is allowed to sudo. So now if I say sudo, or if I say switch users to Brian, I enter that password, and so now who am I here, and I say sudo who am I have to enter my password, root. So by adding Brian to that sudo group, Brian is now able to do sudo things. Does that make sense? So you can create your own groups. Honestly, if you ask me how often do I create my own groups, the answer to that question would be never. Like I almost never do it because I don't manage flocks of Ubuntu servers or anything like that. But I've had to add people to the pseudo users before, so that's why I show you how to do that.